And we are live. What's going on YouTube Live? It's your boy Billy Rowe. Today is Tuesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. If it is Tuesday, you should already know by now what that means. We've been doing this for about like 6 months or something like that now. It's time for an intersation. Intersation is for Tuesdays unless somebody needs to reschedule for a different day. So if it's Tuesday, it's intersation. I'd like to welcome you again to the first row. Tonight's topic is going to be getting out of a rut with my guest, Mark Anthony. Mark, can you please say hello to the people briefly?
What's up, everyone? I'm really excited to be on the show. I've been, I guess, a super fan for a while now in the chat. So if you guys,
I like that.
if you guys have seen Mark Anthony or the network in the chat in past videos, this is the guy right here on your screen. So thank you, Billy, for having me on.
No, thank you for reaching out to connect and be on. I appreciate that. So really quick, tonight's show is going to be a rapid fire show. I'm really looking forward to this topic because I feel like, again, it's something that many of us struggle with, getting stuck in ruts and not really knowing how to get out of them. So tonight's show, for those who are still new to the Intersation concept, I think May is going to be the last month I say this, Mark. Those who are still new to the Intersation concept, what is an intersation? Intersation is simply when you take an interview and a conversation, you merge those two together and you get intersations. So in my life, I'm very fortunate to have a robust network of friends, family, relatives, coworkers, just a robust network of people that I spend time speaking with and interacting with. And those conversations that I have with those people typically go beyond that surface level. Hey, how's your day? What you been up to? What you doing this weekend? Into more deep and meaningful conversation like, what does that mean to you? Why do you think that way? Where did that originate from? Those are the types of conversations that I'm fortunate and privileged to have. So because I have those conversations, I wanted to open up a lens, literally a lens into those conversations so that some of the growth that I get and some of the growth that I experience from those conversations can be shared on an online platform. So that's what Intersations is. It's literally a lens opening up so you can see inside these conversations and not just see inside of these conversations, but contribute to these conversations. So it's more like a group discussion than just a simple interview. However, one thing I want you to keep in mind is though you will see tonight Mark and myself visually going back and forth, I want you to know that we want you guys to be very interactive. I already see you guys in the chat. Sylvia's here. Jessica's here. I appreciate you guys being in here ready to rock and roll. I want you guys to be very interactive tonight. Ask questions, share your experiences, give nuggets, answer questions. If there's somebody who asks a question in the chat that you have something that you want to contribute to, be interactive. That is what this channel is about. It's about growth, but it's also about interacting and connecting with one another on deeper levels, on more, honestly, I'm going to use a word here that's probably scary for a lot of people, but on more vulnerable levels. So with that in mind, let's get started tonight. I feel like it's getting ready to go down or go up, depending on how you want to read that, but it's getting ready to go some way, up or down, whichever way you want to go. But let's get into tonight's topic. With that, I want to give you, Mark, an opportunity to introduce yourself on what, number one, you said you're a super fan. I want to ask you why you're a super fan of First Row, but let's talk about the topic first. Then you can kind of explain on the back end why you're a super fan of First Row. So with this topic, this particular topic, what attracted you to the First Row for this particular topic?
Yes, great question. Like in all your previous videos, you got different guests on talking about their own experiences and guess how they learned and grown in whatever the topic was, whether it was management, leadership, communication, relationships, whatever it was. I really enjoy hearing those stories, and I enjoyed, interacting in the live chat with your guests and yourself. So I felt like, I got, my own life experiences, I like to share with, the regulars on the show. So I think, you got everyday people on the show. I'm an everyday person. You're an everyday person. So I feel like, I've kind of felt like obligated as I'm always in the chat. So I feel like I got to contribute. So I reached out to you to be on the show. And here I am now.
I like that though, because again, this is what the network is about us all sharing our stories. Like trust me, I have a lifetime. I have at least 38 years of stories, and I remember at least probably 36 of those years. But we all have stories, and we all have experiences that we can share that give different perspectives, that lend a different perspective on how to solve problems that I think that are honestly universal problems, universal challenges, universal issues that we all deal with. So I'm glad that you took to the plate or stepped to the plate to jump on an Intersation and really jump into something that is I think is a really good topic for you. And I'm going to share, actually, I'm going to do something a little different, share why I felt like this would be a good topic for us to discuss on the Intersation. And a lot of that is because of our interaction when you did reach out and say, hey, I want to do a show. And I said, well, let's connect and talk and see what you want to talk about. And maybe I can get some show ideas from there. And one of the things that you said to me that really stood out was, yeah, I grew up and I was an introvert, and the way I had to like push myself out of that was basically constantly pushing yourself into an uncomfortable position. And I have a couple friends who are introverts, and one of them was like, yeah, if he's an introvert and he's working like as an extrovert or to be out there, that's a lot of work, and that can be exhausting. So that's why a lot of introverts just stay introverts. So I thought that this would be a really good topic for you on getting out of that rut, because sometimes we get comfortable in our rut that we're in because it keeps us protected, or it makes us where we don't have to reach out, or we don't have to expend extra energy. So I really think this is a good topic for you tonight. I think that you're gonna knock it out the park. Hey, welcome, cousin Brian and Mrs. B. Nepo. Is that somebody you know?
That's my wife.
Oh, okay. Hey, what's going on, Mrs. Nepotism Network? So let's jump in to tonight. As always, Mark, you've seen enough Intersations to know where we're going to start at. As always, I like to start with the exact same question. What does the topic of getting out of a rut mean to you?
Yeah, so what it means to me is, like, if you find yourself in a undesirable situation in life, like, what are you gonna do yourself to propel yourself out of it? Like, what are you gonna do to elevate it? Instead of, just waiting around, like, thinking something's magically gonna happen, like, what can you do? And I think it's an important topic because I feel like a lot of people, they feel like if they're in a certain situation that they feel helpless, like they don't have any options. But, throughout my lifetime, I realized back then I felt trapped, like I didn't have any options. But as I got older and got more life experience, I realized that I had more power than I thought I did. So I think tonight, you're gonna have good conversation about your options, like what you can do. I don't want people to feel like they're stuck and this has to be the rest of their life. Like, I want people to think outside the box. Like, you got options, so so basically I want to help people realize just to think outside the box. Don't limit yourself, basically.
Okay. I actually like that. Really thinking about the options that you have. I think sometimes we get caught in I think the word is conundrum. Don't quote me on that. But we get caught in these cycles of, we're in this situation, and instead of looking for the options out of the situation, let me clarify that. Instead of looking for the healthy options out of the situation, we just look at the situation and we're like, oh, we're stuck here. I'll always be here. It's never going to change. I'm not going to get anywhere. I might as well just stay in this rut, in this funk. So I think that's really really good as far as from the perspective of looking at the options that you have. And then also what I hear you saying is accountability, taking accountability and not just sitting and waiting around for somebody to throw you a lifeline. Hey, if somebody does throw you a lifeline, great. But if they don't, then you want to sit there forever. You want to cut your limb off with a pocket knife and survive. That's because that's happened before in a real life situation. I think that's true. What the topic also means for me from being stuck in a rut is really understanding yourself from the seasonality perspective, like the seasons that you go through. So somebody who suffers from depression, somebody who suffers from anxiety, knowing what those triggers are, in order to get out of that rut, and being able to say, okay, these are the triggers that are going to pull me down into the groove or pull me down into this pit. And here's how I can avoid jumping or stepping into the pit in the first place. So when I start thinking about getting out of a rut, I start really thinking from my perspective, very proactively about staying out of the rut. So that way you don't have to get out of it. But inevitably, our lives are not perfect. We're going to make missteps. We're going to make mistakes. Because of that factor alone, you're going to have some type of game plan or a strategy to get yourself effectively out of rut. So that's what the topic means to me. Jessica says here that you just have to make moves and figure it out later. Yes. Hey, what's going on, Terrelyn? Yeah, you just sometimes got to step, like they call it, stepping out on faith. Sometimes you just got to step out on faith and hope for the best, and then look back later and be like, oh, we made it through that. I don't even remember the steps that it took to get there, but movement will get you out of a rut. Unless you're in quicksand, but standing movement will cause you to sink in quicksand. But in a rut, movement can get you out of the rut, or at least it can get you to a different destination within the rut. So with that, that's the easiest question you're going to get for the night. I hope you're ready, because we're getting ready to rapid fire, bang, bang, bang. My next question that I'd like to ask you is, in your opinion, how do we even find ourselves in ruts in life? I mean, you can use your personal experience or just your overall opinion.
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like even if we know we're in a rut, let's say we're working like a dead end job we don't really like, we're miserable, waking up in the morning, going to work. I mean, we just continue the cycle because it's familiar, and what's familiar is easy. Even though you may be miserable, it's still comfortable. It's kind of like an oxymoron. You don't like it, but at the same time, it's comfortable, and you don't have to put in any extra effort. You're just coasting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in order to get out of the rut, you actually got to put in effort. You got to put in more time, energy, emotional investment. There's a lot that goes into elevating yourself. So I feel like people get stuck because it's the easy thing to do. You don't have to do anything. You just, like we talked about before, you just stay in one place. And that's it.
Right. It's funny because it's easy and it's familiar to be in a rut. However, trying to get out of a rut, which if you get out of the rut is healthy for you, kind of risks disappointment, because it'd be like, being in a pit and you're trying to climb out and then you grab a loose root and you slip back down to the bottom. Now you got to start all over climbing out of this pit. And sometimes I think you're right, that familiarity. I tell people all the time, I had a counselor in anger management who was like, hey, this relationship that you're in is toxic and you're still in it because it's familiar. And so, it stinks, it's crap, it's not healthy for you, but because it, you stay in it, versus leaving that relationship and getting into something more healthy for yourself and allowing the other person to get into something more healthy for themselves. So I definitely agree with you. Have you ever been in any professional ruts? I know you're a pretty driven person when it comes to professional, but have you ever been in any professional ruts?
Yeah, I have actually. This was about 3 years ago. I just finished my bachelor's degree, and right after I graduated, I worked at a job where it didn't really require a bachelor's degree or much education or anything. It was, not trying to like talk down on other people, but it was way below what I was capable of. So, I still went to work, worked hard, was responsible, was professional. I handled my business and all that. I still took the job seriously, but I felt like I worked there for about like 9 months. I felt like in that time period, I could have been doing something on my ability level or higher. I felt
Mhm.
like if I just stayed in this job for the next 2, 3, 5 years, like I wasn't gonna grow at all. It would be comfortable. It'd be easy just to go to work 5 days a week, get a check, live my life, whatever. But it was it was just below my ability level. So
So
you go ahead.
I was going to ask you, so what do you think drove you to want more?
what drove me to want more is that I went to school for. It took me 7 years to get a bachelor's degree. I was on the super senior program, so so it took. I went through a lot just in undergrad. That's a story for another day, but I went through a lot to get my degree in my education, and I went through a lot just with previous work experience too. And this job I was at wasn't really related to my degree. My degree is in hospitality management, and
Okay.
I was not doing hospitality management whatsoever at this job. So I felt like I had all this potential, all these skills, knowledge, experience inside of me, but I just couldn't utilize it at that job. So eventually, I was just like, I gotta level up. I gotta, if I don't make a move soon, I may just become complacent. So I finally decided to head back to Houston, where I went to school at, and start over and try and get back into my original field, which is hotels.
Mm. That's interesting. So, from the perspective of a rut, that's it's fascinating because when I see a rut, I think of tire tracks in deep mud, and that's what I think of as a rut. And so, a lot of people spin their wheels trying to go forward, and they dig themselves deeper into that rut. A lot of people will try to pull the car out sideways, but sometimes it does require for you to go backwards. And I feel like for some reason there's like this shame that we have adopted as a society for going backwards, going back to the beginning. It's really that going back to the drawing board mentality. It's like, okay, what I'm doing right now is not working, and I know that I have more to give, or I know I can do more. And instead of allowing yourself to become complacent, or instead of allowing yourself to become stuck because you're so hell bent on doing more where you're at, how it is day after day, you're like, hey, look, I'm gonna just go back to the beginning and we're gonna try this all over again. I got a little bit more experience this time, so hopefully I don't end up in the mud pit or stuck in this rut. So I like the fact that you were willing to have the courage and the honesty with yourself to say, hey, maybe going back is the right idea. So I think that's really good. Really quick to bring some things in the chat because I do not want to get too far lost in the chat. I have Jessica saying, seek counsel. Another perspective is so important. And then I told Jessica the right perspective. And then Antoine Wade of Black Heights says, it doesn't matter. You got it done. He laughed when you said you were a super senior. You got it done. Hey, you got it done. I still don't have a BA, so you got it done. And then T Frizz says, that is true. Struggle and a recent grad. Oh, okay. That is a true struggle and a recent grad. True. It's I think that's a struggle that a lot of graduates have, though, is, okay, now I have this education or I have this degree that says I've studied in depth in a specific subject, and then trying to move forward and to transition into the professional realm. It's sometimes a struggle. It's not just like, I guess sometimes we think it's going to be, I got the paper, now I got the job. And it's sometimes like, I got the paper, I'm doing something completely unrelated. I'm doing something completely unrelated. Okay, now I'm finally to the place where I'm using the education that I got. And sometimes we never get to the place that we use the education that we got it directly as the experience, whether like yours being in hospitality. But you still may use some of the skill sets or some of the tools that you've learned along the road of that education. So I really, really like that. My next question that I have for you is from your perspective, and the experiences that you had, how do we identify ruts early in their developmental process?
Well, that's a great question. So in the very beginning, I think you can identify it early on by like if you're in a situation, if you feel like if you enter a situation and you don't feel like you can grow, if you don't feel like the sky is the limit for you, then I think that's a pretty good sign that you're gonna hit a wall pretty quickly. I'll go back to the example I made at that job I had right after I graduated. When I entered that job, I mean, it was a pretty small company, and I knew like the CEO of the company, she's not going to let that go, and I know the manager above me, she's not going to let that position go. So I think I knew right away I wasn't going to go very far within that small company. So I mean, hope that makes sense. So in that example, if you feel like, or if you know for sure in the very beginning, in whatever you do, whether it's school, a job, even a relationship, if you feel like in the very beginning that things aren't going to go very far, or if you feel like you're just you're just going to be stuck on square one, there's no room for growth, then I think that's a pretty good sign that you're going to be stuck in a rut.
Yeah, I think that is a good professional sign. Um, there's some benefits to being in smaller organizations. There's that family feel sometimes there's that high school feel, depending on the organization. But there's typically a family feel. You're a little closer. You're closer to the decisions that are being made than you are with like a larger organization. I work for a very large organization now, but I came from a smaller organization, and I was really close to the decisions that were made, and people were asking for my input. However, there was in my mind, I'm really quick at like, I don't really care what the ceiling is. I'm just like, okay, if this is the ceiling, then this is how I go around the ceiling. I just go outside, get a ladder, and now I'm on the roof, and now there's no ceiling. But I had a boss who was very much like entrenched in his position. And so because he was entrenched in his position, it was like, well, I know that one of the options of growth is not taking his role unless he gets fired and they say, hey, we want you now, Billy, to be the boss. But even with that ceiling being in place, I was like, hey, look, if you're comfortable in your position, great, kudos for you. I'll just go around you. And then if you're okay reporting to me because you stayed in your position, then great. We'll continue to have this career that develops and helps me grow. But then I started seeing things where that particular individual would try to undermine my ability to grow and undermine my ability to get closer to higher levels of management, because it was like, well, if he's not reporting to me, then what is my validation of being a boss? And so I think that is a very important early warning sign to pay attention to. If you're seeing the writing on the wall and you don't see a way around that ceiling, then it's time to make a move to where you do have that feeling, or that at least the idea that you can have that unlimited growth. And then sometimes you're just in an organization for the time being to gain the growth for yourself as an individual professional, and then moving on to maybe another organization. So I like that you use that to identify that. Really quick, because the chat is super lively tonight, man. I told you I never know if it's going to be interactive or if it's going to be quiet. It looks like T-Frizz says going back is the right idea. This is in regards to you going back to start over, learning to find a mentor that will help you pull. I think it's supposed to be up. Jessica says a familiar, quote unquote, uneasy feeling is something that is a warning sign you can look for. Janae, hey cousin, says I always circle back to my end goal and ask myself if what I am doing is pulling me towards my goal. Your wife says transferable skills will definitely help transitioning jobs or industries. And then Janae says, if not, I gotta go. That's the end of if it's not pulling her towards her goal. And T-Frizz says, always keep your eyes open if you're not in your dream job. Always keep your resume and LinkedIn refreshed. At Janae, great point. That is one thing. What are your thoughts about that from the professional aspect? I understand what T-Frizz is saying. If you don't feel like you're at your dream organization, to keep your resume up. But what about proactively keeping yourself out of a rut? How do you feel about making sure your resume is updated even if you are in your dream position?
Yes, great question. I mean, yeah, like T first says, actually my sister-in-law, you keep your, I mean, even if you're on your dream job, because you never know when a layoff can come or a structural reorganization, whatever the company wants to call it. You never know
Mhm.
when it can hit. So, just always do your due diligence to have your resume ready. It doesn't mean you're ready to walk out the door or anything. It just means you're ready to just protect yourself, for lack of a better term. But
Mhm.
even if you are in your dream job, you can always work on new skills outside of work. For example, like myself, I work in hotels now. I mean, I like my job. I mean, I love it. Like, it's the best hotel job I've ever had. But at the same time, outside of work, like right now, I'm working on learning computer programming and coding. I mean, it has nothing to do with my day-to-day stuff at work, but I know that computer programming is a high in demand skill that people need now and in the future, assuming people don't stop using computers, which I highly doubt is going to happen. So
Right.
stuff
No.
like that. So just have hobbies outside of work, but also make sure that not all of your hobbies, but maybe have at least one or two hobbies that can be real, I guess, real world skills that can help you create income for yourself.
Yeah. It's funny because my mother used to get on me when I was a kid. I would play video games all the time, all the time. Like I went outside and played because I grew up in that era. But if I wasn't outside playing and my homework was done, I was playing Nintendo, Sega, Dreamcast, whatever system it was hot at the time. I was playing it. And even though I was just playing video games, there was a lot of background knowledge that I got from playing video games, like how to set up an entertainment center, how to make all these connections work, how to, do all these different things. And then later in life, when I'm an adult, people are buying these flat screen TVs and these talking remotes and these wireless Bluetooth headsets and all these different things that they needed help to set up. Like to the extent where I was making really good side money just setting up entertainment centers. And I was like, I don't got to buy any of this stuff. You guys are just buying the stuff, and all I got to do is set it up. And anything I don't know, I can read the manual and understand. And all that knowledge came from simply playing video games. A lot of the work that I do now in Excel is because it was a hobby for me. I just liked Excel, enjoyed working with it. And even though I didn't have a job that I was using Excel in, I would always work on Excel on the side. And now I work with Excel every single day to some points it frustrates the heck out of me. But you're right. Having that mindset of even though this isn't my dream job, it doesn't mean, or even if it is my dream job, it doesn't mean that I can't be working on something on the side that can also be revenue generating. So I like that. I think that's a really good tool. The next question I have for you is for you, and I really want to hear from on a personal level for you,
Okay.
not necessarily the professional spectrum, but from the personal level for you, what has been your most difficult rut to climb out of personally?
Personal, yeah. Yeah, this was about how many years? Maybe around 2011, 2012, 7, 8 years ago. I mean, I went through I guess, a phase of depression because I felt really lost in life. I was only 20, 21 at the time, and I felt like first of all, like I didn't know what I wanted to do in life, and then I was struggling in college and stuff, and then I was single at the time, and then I saw like all my friends and peers, like they were on the fast track to having a great paying job. They're in a great, committed relationship. So to me, like I felt like a huge loser compared to my peers because on the outside it seemed like they had their whole life figured out. And here I am just trying to figure out what do I want to do just to make income, you know what I mean? And I felt like if I don't know who I am now, why would a girl want to be my girlfriend? You know what I mean? So I just felt like the whole weight of the world on me because I don't know who I am, and because I don't know who I am, I can't get the benefits of like having a good paying job, having a girlfriend, having a bunch of cool friends, I guess, like, you know what I mean? So that was a rut I was in. I just I didn't have any direction. So I guess my main dilemma was I need to figure out who I am, and then once I figured out who I really am, that's when I could finally get the ball rolling, and everything else in my life would take care of itself.
So, how did you keep from getting distracted by the everything else? Because it's easy to get distracted by, well, I don't have a good paying job, or I don't have the job that I think I should have. I don't have a girlfriend, or I don't have the girl that I want, or the girlfriend that I do want doesn't want me. Like all these different things. How do you keep from getting distracted by that and really focusing on what the rut is? The rut in this particular example is the identity. The lack of understanding your own identity is creating all these other sub symptoms. So how do you keep from getting distracted by the symptoms and focus on the actual rut at hand, which is identity?
Yeah, I think it's really important. You gotta realize you gotta focus on your own happiness first, because back then I was so focused on making other people happy. I was so focused on trying to be a certain type of guy to attract women. I was so focused on portraying a certain image of myself to attract people to want to hire me. But what was missing was working on myself. I wasn't really working on myself. I was distracted by putting on an image. So what I would say is you really got to get to know yourself, like have an honest assessment of what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and really instead of focusing on your weaknesses, because everyone's gonna have a weakness no matter what. So what can you do to capitalize on your strengths? Because if you capitalize on your strengths, that's when you'll realize what you're good at. And when you realize what you're good at, that's when you can figure out how I can make money, whether it's utilizing your strengths to apply for a job and selling your strengths to an employer, or using your strengths to create your own business. So I would say focus what you're good at, because everyone is good at something. There's no one out there that is not good at anything. Everyone's good at least one or two things. So
Right.
learn what you're really good at and then just roll with it. Don't worry about weaknesses. Don't worry about what other people think. Really focus in on what you're good at and just go crazy. Maximize it. Just be the
Mm.
best you can be at that one thing. And that way you can sell your services to an employer or sell your services directly to a consumer if you want to go the entrepreneur route.
Right. Yeah. It's funny when I used to do inspirational speaking in California. I was speaking to a group of dancers, and all these dancers were, just dancing because they had a passion for dance. And I would always explain to them, like, "Hey, look, I have a passion for speaking. I have a passion for inspiration. The trick is not. I don't want to use the word trick. The caveat is not trying to have such a passion where it's like, how can I convince people to pay me to be this inspirational speaker? I'm like, the thing that you really want to focus on is how to be so passionate about speaking, how to be so passionate about dancing that people want to pay you to see you do it. Like that's what I think when you say maximizing, find that thing that you're good at, find that thing that you love, and maximize the hell out of it to where people are like, hey, I don't know if you're available this weekend, but I would love to have you come and speak to my people, and we'll pay you to get here. We'll pay for you to get here, and we'll pay you while you're here. And that's when I started seeing myself getting more and more inspirational speaking gigs that were paid gigs instead of, hey, can you just come and talk to such and such for a little bit? But then there's a lot of pre-work that goes into that as well, because just like with computers, like you're talking about trying to understand technology and computers on a deeper level. You're not going to start at the deepest level. You're going to start in the shallows and have to wade your way in, and then get comfortable with the water, splash a little bit. Okay, water's going to get in my eyes, keep my mouth closed, and then before long you'll look back and you'll be like, dang, I'm swimming in technology, and I remember when I was barely treading water. So I like that aspect of maximizing. I want to bring in what Thomas is it Connelly? I think it's Connelly
It's kind of
says. Connolly, thank you.
yeah.
Thomas Connolly says, as someone who works in software, the three things I look for as warning signs of being in a rut: people, product, and process. Do the people around me empower me to be my best professional self? Does the product I'm working on inspire me? And does the processes help? Oh, I'm sorry. And do the processes help me grow or constrain me? I think that's a really great add to the conversation. Thank you, Thomas. So the next question that I would like to present to you is, in your opinion, are the ruts that we find ourselves in, are they more often a self-sabotage, or are they traps that kind of lay in wait for us to step into them? How do you feel we end up in these types of ruts?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think initially we'll fall in the rut based not on our own decision, but based on external factors may put us in a rut. And then once we're in the rut, we'll make it us ourselves, we'll make it worse for ourselves. So, because let's say we get pushed into a rut, it wasn't under our control, but we're in it. It's harder to climb out of it than to just stay in it. Because if you're in a rut, it's easy to stay in it. There's no work involved in it. You're already there.
Right.
So to answer your question, it's so once you're in the rut, like it goes back to the very beginning, it becomes familiar. So I feel like we self-sabotage ourselves by, I guess, being lazy, by being complacent. That's the self-sabotage, is not wanting to put in the effort to climb out of it.
I think that's a really powerful comment there. That it's the laziness is the self sabotage, because we realize at some point. I mean, I think we sometimes don't realize we step into a rut, but at some point we realize we're in a rut, and that laziness, that self sabotage that we do, is we're just too lazy to get out of the rut. It's like, I'm gonna just wait and then I'll get out eventually, or I'll get out next week. I'll tell you right now, I'm struggling to stay in the gym, and it's just a funk that I'm in. It's a rut that I'm in, because I love going to the gym, and I've been going to the gym regularly since 2013, and now 6 years later, it's like, okay, I guess I'll go. Oh, I'm not going to go today. Oh, I guess I'll go. Oh, I'm not going to go today. So today I had to like intentionally say, no, you're going to the gym. Now, granted, I knew I had an intersation tonight. I wanted to go to sleep, take a quick nap before the intersation, and then be ready for the intersation. But I was like, you know what? I have to start on some day starting to go to the gym when I don't feel like it. So if I want the results that I say I want, if I want to have the figure and the body and the strength that I say I want, then I got to go on those days when I don't want to go. And so today I made myself, instead of taking a nap before Intersations, which I do sometimes, but I'm going to stop doing, I just went to the gym and hit it for like an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. And then it's like, okay, now it's time to come back. And actually, here's the crazy thing. Sometimes when I take a nap before the intersation, I'm a little groggy when I wake up. However, going to the gym, I have so much more energy. So why wouldn't I be doing that regularly? Just because I'm familiar with sitting on the couch and familiar with laying in my bed. So I appreciate you for giving me that tool on the laziness, so I can put that somewhere where I can see it regularly, probably in front of my bed. So when I get ready to get in the bed, instead of go to the gym, I'll just say, you know what? Do you want to be stuck in this rut still, Ro? No, I don't want to be. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah.
The next question that I have for you is, so how you were saying that we get stuck in the rut and we stay in that rut because we become lazy, and sometimes that self-sabotage really is us infecting ourselves once we get into the rut. Why do you feel that we defend some of our ruts, even though we know that they are hurtful or harmful to our happiness or our overall well-being?
I think it's just our pride and ego. We don't want to. Sometimes, just as human beings, it's hard to admit to ourselves that we're wrong. We don't want to. I guess we don't want to hold ourselves accountable because we feel embarrassed in the situation we're in. So instead of owning it, we just shy away from owning it because I guess it's easier to avoid self accountability. Because I mean, depending on the person, I mean, some people like it's really hard for them to admit they're wrong. Like they'd rather die than admit they're wrong. Like for some people, it's that serious. So I think it's just a matter of pride and ego, just not wanting to look vulnerable, not wanting to look, just not wanting to be seen in a negative light, whether it's, the immediate people around them and their family, or it may hurt them just to look in the mirror and say, I'm wrong and I need to change. So I think it's just hard for some people to admit that they're wrong.
How much do you think that tools like social media play a part in that, where we see these flawless lives because they're only pictures, they're only snapshots of moments of life, or small videos of moments of life, and we start comparing ourselves to them. And so when you say you said pride and ego, my brain automatically clicks over to pride being our fear and ego being our shame. Like we're fearful of having to be to be disappointing, or to be a disappointment. We're fearful of not being right. We're fearful for our skewed lens of flawlessness in social media being found out, that it's like, oh wait, you're not perfect. And then when we are found out that we're not perfect, we're shameful of it, so we just kind of combat. How much do you think social media plays a role in that logic to stay in a rut even when it's to our own detriment?
Yeah, it's I think social media plays a big role because like on social media, whether it's like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever people use, like very rarely do people show, I guess, the downsides or the negatives going on in their lives. I mean, if you go on Instagram now, I mean, it's easy to see people taking pictures. They got a new car, they got new clothes, shoes, vacations, looking they got a promotion, they got pictures, they got a nice, family picture of their kids, siblings, etc. So when I mean, I'll make a personal story of this. Like back in the day, I kind of had a Facebook addiction because I saw on Facebook constantly people posting their accomplishments and stuff, but I I couldn't I didn't have any pictures like that to post on my page. So I felt like you just feel like so inferior because I didn't have a brand new car to take a picture of. I
Mm.
didn't have a girlfriend to take selfies with. Like I didn't have a diploma at the time. I didn't have a prestigious student high job. I didn't have that. So I feel like people get caught up in this, I guess, online flexing game instead of people trying to actually improve themselves behind the scenes off of social media. They'll just kind of fake the funk and they'll post pictures, but it's like it's staged. It's not their reality. They're just trying to compete with the images that their peers are posting online.
Yeah, no, flexing, internet flexing. That's hilarious. I'm sorry, that just tickles me because it's like I don't even know if that's really yours. So what does that do for me when I see you take a picture with a brand new car? That could be your cousin's car for all I know. It doesn't matter to me. But I
Yeah.
do understand how if you start comparing your life to that life, it's like, oh well, I don't drive a Lamborghini. I don't have a Bugatti. I don't have, an Aston Martin. I don't have all these things that I see everybody else has. It's like they might just, that what was that where Bow Wow was walking around talking about he was taking his private jet because that's how they do things, and he's sitting in the same airplane as everybody else. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, come on, you over here fronting, but it's like somebody is looking at that lifestyle and saying, I need to take private jets everywhere, and I'm not doing what I need to be doing, or I'm irrelevant, or like you said, inferior because I don't have a private jet that I'm catching. Meanwhile, he on the same $49, $59, $69 want to get away flight on Southwest as everybody else. So you go get the same peanuts, the same pretzels, and the same beverage cup that everybody else gets. So it's like, I think we have to learn that, like you said, some of that stuff is not as real as we think it is. But other things the other thing to learn is just because it's not our time, or just because we are not achieving those things or don't have those things yet, it doesn't mean that we'll never get them. It's just not our time right now. And so I like that. The next question that I want to ask you is, do you feel that there are sometimes we use ruts as trenches? So again, ruts going like into deep mud tire tracks. Instead of being quote unquote stuck in a rut, we use it as a trench to defend unhealthy habits that we ourselves are not ready to or willing to change, or maybe now don't even want to change, not even willing, don't even want to change. Do you ever feel like that's a possible use of a rut for people's lives?
Yeah, I feel like some people, they know they're in a rut, and they have the ability to get out of it, but they'll intentionally stay in it because they have a fear of more responsibility, more work outside of the rut. Like, I'll give an example. Like, back at that job we talked about I had right after I graduated, I could have I could have stayed in that position because in that position I basically worked by myself most of the time. I wasn't a manager, supervisor, I wasn't in charge of anyone. I had, for the most part, I had very minimal responsibility. So knowing that I had the ability to get out of the rut, that if and when I do get out of the rut, it's gonna be different. I'm gonna have more work, more responsibility, more stress. So there's like two options. You could stay in a rut to avoid the extra responsibility and the extra work, extra stress, all the extra stuff that comes with, I guess, a higher paying job, or you could stay where you're at now because, I mean, it may not be the most ideal situation, but you just don't feel like dealing with the extra responsibility, so you're just gonna purposely stay in a lesser role.
That reminds me, I had a friend once tell me when he moved out of California that he enjoyed talking to me because we grew up together. And in my eyes, he was just a regular everyday person. However, the place he had moved to, he felt like he was like a big fish in a small pond. So there were a lot of yes men and yes women around him that would like stroke his ego when he was like way off the reservation. And I was like, I don't live out there with you, and I don't really care. I mean, I wasn't like rude, like I don't really care about, I'm gonna tell you to shoot it straight. It wasn't anything like that. It was just like I didn't care about the big pond, the big fish, little pond syndrome that he was in. It was just like, look, we were friends, we grew up together, so I know we eat, sleep, breathe, go to the bathroom, do pretty much everything that you do in a day, I do in a day, and everything I do in a day, you do in a day. So I see you as the brother that I grew up with, and that's how we roll. So I think there are some times where people get they're enticed or intoxicated with that I'm in this role that is not an inferior role, but it is inferior to my capabilities. But because it is inferior to my capabilities, I excel at it and it makes me look great. Every day I show up, people are like, oh, you're the greatest. I got cheerleaders and everything. But if there's something more that I can do, it really, the onus is on me to get uncomfortable and move into those spaces where I can take what I've learned in this pond that I'm outgrowing and take it into the ocean and start learning how to navigate those currents. So I like that aspect of it. I'm going to remind the chat, this is interactive. They were like hot for a second and then everybody just disappeared. So, hey, get
Yeah.
involved. You guys jump on in the conversation. If you have a question, ask it. If you have a comment, give it. The other aspect of those protecting or defending ruts, are there ruts that are healthy for us to be in? Are there ruts that sometimes we should indefinitely put ourselves in? Are there ruts that we should temporarily or occasionally put ourselves in? Do you have any examples, or what are your thoughts on those ruts that are healthy for us?
That's a very interesting question. A healthy rut. Okay, so a healthy rut, I would say, would be is, let's say you've been the past 2 months you've been putting in 70 to 80 hours a week at work. So I mean, obviously that's a lot of work for anyone. So
Right.
I think a good rut would be is to find time to, maybe take 1 or 2 weeks vacation where you're not working, where you're just at home on the couch, eating Cheetos, watching Netflix, whatever, just being lazy. Because that's a rut in itself, just sitting on the couch and TV all day. But I think it's a good rut because it's well deserved because you were putting in so many hours before, and plus you need that time to just refresh and recuperate and get your sanity back, get your health back, just rejuvenate yourself. So that way you can go back to work and just continue on and just be your normal productive self. So I think that would be a good rut is putting in a lot of work first, getting things done, and then after that, finding your quote unquote lazy time. It's not really lazy because you did work before, but it's just time for yourself that you can just refresh and just get your mental health, get your emotional, physical health together. Because no, it's impossible. No one is a robot. No one can work 80 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, because you might not make it to week 52 if you're doing
Right.
that. So
Your
I
body
think
will
that would
shut
be,
you down.
yeah. So I think that would be a good rut. Is a, guess if you want to call it a relaxation rut
Mm.
or a rejuvenation rut. I think
I
that's how.
like that. A relaxation and rejuvenation run. I think there's I think I'm starting to assimilate some of cousin Mo's mindset, because he always looks for the positive, and it's easy to just like get overly negative in a rut, like, oh, it's a rut, it's a funk, it's not something that you want to be in. However, there are times where I think that a rut can slow us down, can have us take that much needed break, to be able to really recoup, because the true rut is not the break that you're taking. The real rut is working 80 hours a week. You're stuck in a rut of working an abundance of hours that is eventually going to burn you out. So I like that aspect of it. But I just thought, I wanted to know if there was any ruts that you could think of that would work to our advantage. The next question that I want to ask, and we're almost to the end, to wrapping up. So for those who are watching live in the chat, if there is any question that you want to ask, any comment that you want to give, now is the time to definitely give that, because we're going to be wrapping up soon. But also, I want you to be thinking about what you've taken away from tonight's conversation. And if you can, put that in the chat for us so we can take a look at what everybody's getting from this conversation, what type of growth is being stimulated from the conversation. So the next question that I have for you, Mark, is how do we disengage the autopilot that is driving our habitual complacency? And the reason I say it like that is because, like you said, the laziness is the autopilot, where we just say it's routine, it's mundane. We know what it's going to be week after week, day after day, hour after hour, minute after minute. And so we just click the autopilot and fly through it like it's a routine. How do we disengage that to become more aware of the rut that we're in and more intentional on getting out of it?
That's a great question. So that's probably the hardest question of the night, but I got this. So it's a get disengage. If you're on autopilot, I think you could assume that you're not. There's nothing new. There's no new spark. There's no new interest. in what you're doing. Everything is just dull. So to get out of the autopilot, I would say is to find a new challenge or find a new interest in whatever you're doing. Find something new to bring into the fold. Because if you bring something new in, it'll shake everything up. It'll force you to grow. Because if something's new in your life, you're going to be forced to adapt. When you're forced to adapt, you're going to grow in some capacity. So I would say to get out of the autopilot is to bring something new in. It doesn't have to be something major. Like I'll give an example. Like if you're at a job and you've worked at that job for like 10 years, you've mastered everything, everything is second nature, nothing's new. You can, like you said, you can just breeze on through it. So to get out of that, try at your job, learn a new position or learn a new skill at your job that normally is outside of your responsibilities. Like for example, I work in a hotel, so I'm a housekeeping manager in a hotel, and I've been at where I'm at now for a year now. So there are times where I am on autopilot because I've pretty much mastered 90% of what the job entails.
Mhm.
So to get myself out of autopilot, I'll take initiative to learn something new. For example, I'll go up to one of the employees that works at reception at the front desk of the hotel. I'll ask them, "Hey, how do you do this on the computer? Hey, how do you check a guest in? How do you do a room transfer in the computer?" Or I'll ask someone that works in the kitchen, "Hey, how do you cook the rice for the evening meal? How does this machine work in the kitchen?" Or I'll ask the maintenance guy, "Hey, how do you fix this toilet?" Or "How do you put on a new window curtain in the room?" Just something like that. It doesn't have to you don't have to change your whole job description. Just go
Right.
outside of your usual position, reach out to someone that's in a completely different position as you within your company and just ask them, "Hey, I'm interested in how you do that. If you have
Mm.
time, can you show me?" Just something like that can help you break the autopilot.
I like that. Yeah, they say in sales, the new sales are the lifeblood of the company. And so, in the world of the rut, I'm going to say something new is the lifeblood of staying or getting out of a rut and getting out of the routine or the complacency. So, I like that. Finding something new that drives you to adapt. I'm writing a star by that one. And so, the second to the last question that I have for you for the evening is, so we talked a lot about getting out of the rut, different ways on how to get out of the rut, how to use the rut to our advantage. But sometimes we get out of ruts, and what happens is in the unfamiliar we are actually drawn back to the rut that we left or that we climbed out of. How do you avoid going back? So let's go all the way back to your introvert personality. How
Okay.
do you avoid going back to the rut of just simply being willing to just be complacent as an introvert? I'm not saying introverts are complacent, but I'm saying
Mhm.
your willingness of saying, I'm not going to be just an introvert. How do you avoid going or being drawn back into that?
Yeah, well, I think I got a good answer for that. So, yeah, man, me myself as an introvert, I mean, yeah, it's difficult for me to break out of the comfort zone, but it's always really easy to climb back into my shell. So I guess to keep me on my toes, to keep myself on edge consistently, what I do is I try to talk to different people that I don't know because I mean, the people that I already know, I'm already really comfortable with them, so I don't have to go out of my comfort zone to talk to them. But whether I'm reaching out to someone in person or reaching out to someone online, that helps me, that keeps me on edge, that keeps me, I guess, comfortably uncomfortable. Like it, you know what I mean? Like it's, I gotta, that person doesn't know me, I don't know them, so I can't just keep to myself. I mean, if I do this, there's no relationship is gonna form.
Right.
And I'm big on, even though I'm an introvert, I'm really big on having meaningful relationships. So if I really want to get to know this person that I think is an interesting person to know, I gotta step out, I gotta initiate it. I have to introduce myself, whether I walk up to them and shake their hand, my name is Mark, what's your name? And then get a conversation going from there. Or even when I first reached out to you on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
that was out of my comfort zone because I mean we didn't know each other at the time. So
Right.
I really had to I really had to come correct in introducing myself and showing you that, you know, I'm legit. I'm a real I'm a real person that you should get to know. I
Mhm.
couldn't just go on LinkedIn and type to you on the very first message, like, yo, Billy, what's up? Like you're gonna be like, if you read that, you're gonna be like, who is this guy? Why is
Right.
he
I don't
saying
know you. Why are you talking to me so comfortably?
yeah, so that would be the easy thing to do. But the harder thing to do to actually forge a real connection with you was actually type, I don't know, 2 or 3 paragraphs explaining who I am and why I'm interested in your show.
No, that's
Yeah.
true. There is this allure that can easily draw you back, like you said, go to into your shell, to where you can just be like, okay, I'm in my shell, I'm comfortable, I'm safe, and I'll only come out when there's other people that I know that I'm comfortable and I still feel safe around, which really is not growth. That is just, you're still comfortable, so your shell expanded. You didn't leave your shell. Your shell just
Mhm.
encompassed the people that you knew. But having that intentionality of, hey, not only am I going to leave my shell, I'm going to put myself out there. So I'm going to take like 3 steps away from my shell. Some people try to like leave their shell, but want to keep one foot in the door just in case they got to run back in their shell. So I think that that's really good, a good practice of, hey, the onus is on me, not the onus is on the person to come and knock on the door of my shell and try to coerce or coax me out of my shell. The onus is on me to step out of my shell and put myself in a vulnerable position if I really want to make more deep and meaningful connections. So I think that's a really great answer. The last question that I have for you tonight, I start with the same question, I end with the same question. The For those who are watching via live in the chat, or for those who may be watching via the replay, if they were to take 2 to 3 things from tonight's conversation, what would those things be that you would want them to take from tonight's conversation about getting out of the rut?
Yeah, for sure. The number one thing I would tell the audience now we're on the restream would be just don't wait around. You gotta take take action immediately. Don't think that there's gonna be someone to fall out of the sky and save you. You gotta take destiny into your own hands. I mean, that might sound cliche, like something from a movie, but I mean, that's real life. It's true. So, and then second, kind of tied into that is when I say take control, create your own destiny, that requires, you know, creativity. So, like we said earlier, think about your strengths and you whatever your strength is, use that to get out of the rut. Because no one is just gonna come up to you and ask you, "Hey Billy, hey Mark, what's your strength? How can you help me?" That's not how it
Right.
works. You gotta know your own strength and tell them about it. And then if they like what you have to offer, then they can help you. So I'd say first, take ownership of your situation. And second, find your strength and then use your strength to be creative with it.
Okay.
And then Lastly, I would say is just don't give up. Like in the beginning, like let's say you finally decide you're gonna take your destiny into your own hands and you're gonna create your own reality. I mean, at the very beginning, you'll be all gung ho and all excited and stuff, which is great, but everything isn't gonna happen for you overnight. You may have to grind a month, 2 months, 3 months, half a year, 1 year, 2 years, however long it is. But as long as you know you're catering to your strengths, as long as you're going out of your comfort zone, as long as you're taking initiative, as long as you know you're not just waiting for the world to cater to you, you'll be fine.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny. Well, I'll say it at the end, but don't give up, and it's not going to happen overnight. It might be a grind, and I like that. That's definitely three good takeaways from tonight's conversation. Really quick in the chat, Thomas Kennelly, you said was the name?
Connolly?
Connolly. Gosh, I don't know why I keep saying Kennelly, but Connolly. I'm going to work on that, Thomas. It says, in your experience with getting out of a rut, how do you know when it's time to leave the situation? In parentheses, look for new employment versus try to convert your current situation into a place you want to work.
Oh, that's a real good question. So I'll address the first part when he asked, when is it time to leave the situation? Parentheses, look for new employment. So what I would say is ask yourself, have you exercised all your options first? Don't just decide to leave and you only tried changing up one or two things. Like if you're gonna leave, make sure you've exhausted everything you can do in your power to make your situation better. Only after if you've done everything possible to make to try and make the situation better at your current job, then you can consider leaving. And then the second part when he said let me read it, said convert your current situation into a place. So kind of that kind of ties into it. So convert. Okay, so I'll just answer it as if it's a standalone question.
Okay.
So I mean, if you really wanna convert your current situation and you don't want to leave, I mean, I would say you just gotta make really big changes. Because if you just do small changes, I mean, nothing. That's really not gonna make a big impact. I mean, it's kind of general. Depends on your work environment, what type of job you have. So I'll make an example of my own job just to give it context so it's easier for people to understand. So like my job now, I mean I'm a manager, I have a staff of 9 people. So I mean I really like my job a lot. So I don't want to really just up and leave like that. So well let's say for whatever reason that the situation changes, the culture changes within the company, but it's a situation. Sorry, it's a culture I don't like, but I don't want to leave. So, what am I gonna do to change it? So, in my situation as a manager, I mean, I do have a big say in the culture. So, something I would do like immediately to help shift the culture to a more positive one would be like what I would do is I would like call a mandatory meeting with all the employees and tell them, okay, I know what's been going on within our department, within our company. Things have gone out of hand, things have become toxic, things are at a point where it's unacceptable. So I would have like a list of key points that I would really stress to my employees that these are the standards, these are the expectations. This is the new culture, and in order to make a real change, these new policies, these new rules, these aren't it's not flexible, it's not optional, it's not up for debate. Excuse me. These policies, these regulations are in place to better the work environment, because obviously what's going on now is not working at all. So how to implement change like that is just to excuse me, throat's drying up on me.
It's all right.
I'll say just have hard set rules, have a hard set culture in place that that is best for everyone that's involved in the company. Have it so fixed, have it so set in place that anyone that deviates, that they're gonna face some type of like disciplinary action. Like I guess you gotta just lay down the law.
Hmm.
Oh, thank you.
That's, that's teammate right there. I think that may work. Sometimes it may or may not work depending on the culture, like you said. But
Yeah.
I think that works when you're in the management position.
Yeah.
To address Thomas's question, where I was not in the management position, I actually, in my previous employment, I think from where you said, in your experience getting out of the rut, how do you know when it's time to leave the situation? That really, the time when it came time for me to leave the situation was when it was apparent to me that I was becoming somebody that I didn't want to become. And from the perspective of your takeaways, Mark, that's for me, that's how I took action and really started becoming the author of my destiny. I was like, look, you guys pay me decent. You could pay me more, but you pay me decent. But I'm not about to stay here and become this angry, bitter person because I'm going to stay in this particular type of environment. Now, when it comes to converting the situation, that decision to leave came 5 months after I had already communicated to my manager, hey, look, here's what's taking place. This is why I'm not happy. Here's what my key frustrations are. They need to be addressed. And it wasn't like a threat, oh, you're going to address somewhere else. It was just like, these things need to be addressed. And as my manager, I need you to be my voice going up in regards to these things that need to be addressed, because what it's going to do is what it's causing with me is a significant frustration to the point where I'm questioning, do I want to come to this job in the morning? And when that becomes a question, it leads down a path to an inevitable end of, for myself and my personality, I don't want to come here anymore. So here's my resignation. And so we went 5 months after I communicated that to, hey, we need to convert this environment because I want to stay. I want the growth. I want the opportunities. But when that need wasn't met and I started seeing myself become somebody I wasn't, being the person at work complaining about the environment, being the person who's no longer uplifting and positive in the environment, but just kind of like, hey, I just come here to get a check. When that became the person I started to become, it was time for me to go. And so then it was no longer about converting the environment, no longer about communicating up to the higher management that, hey, these are the things that we need to change. This is the support that we need. It became what's going to be healthiest for Billy, because Billy is the one who has to not get fired from this job so that he can maintain a certain professional level to gain another, to be gainfully employed in another organization. So that, from the perspective for me, is how I had to work it, where I wasn't the manager. I didn't have the ability to bring down initiatives, but I did have the ability to communicate once the environment didn't change. And I seen that the environment was changing me. No time for it. I'm out. So I hope that answers your question. Sylvia, don't worry if your phones are busy. We appreciate you being on. But thank you. That's a great question, Mark. Thank you for answering that question as well. So first off and foremost, thank you for taking time to come on the first row, from transitioning from the chat audience member into actually being a guest. I think that that's one of the testaments of the first row, is that I started off with people I knew, started off in my shell, my comfort zone, people that I knew, and it's starting to branch out into people that I don't know. And that's really what growth is about branching out into that unknown, and finding those other people that you can connect with on deeper levels that are going to help you find safety, maybe not be safety in its entirety, but safety in that unknown. So I appreciate you for coming out, sharing your story, your transparency, and really providing some tools and insights to the audience and to myself as I'm taking notes. So thank you for taking the time out of your evening to come. There's definitely more to come on the first row. I'm sure we'll get you in on some panels or some other things, but continue to push yourself, because I think that there's a lot of wisdom in there from a lot of your experiences that, though we may have heard before, we haven't heard your experience. So it's a matter of you're sharing your experience, which gives us, again, another perspective, and maybe turns on a light for somebody that didn't get the light turned on the first 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. So thank you again for being on tonight. With that, as always, with every Intersation, I like to provide what I call tools for the first row. The way the name First Row came about was, it's actually a play on my last name. My last name is Rowe, W-R-O-E. But the first row part came from a business mentor that I had at a very young age. He taught me that, hey, the people who sit on the first row, they make the most money and they get the most information, because there's no distraction between them and the person presenting that information. So that is where I took that name First Row from. And as such, you guys are on the first row tonight. We are all on the first row tonight. And so what I like to do for the first row is, at the end of every Intersation, is present what I call tools for the first row. And these tools are simply things that I thought about that helped me kind of gain clarity on when I was creating the content for tonight's Intersation, and really things that I've used to get out of ruts in my own personal life. So I only got 3 for you tonight. I'm kind of cutting down on the tools, because I've been like, sometimes like 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I just got 3 tools for you that I want to share with you tonight on getting out of a rut. And so the very first tool that I came up with when it comes to getting out of a rut is ask ourselves if we are too comfortable. A lot of what Mark spoke about tonight was about being lazy, being comfortable, being complacent. That is a telltale sign that we are in a rut. So if we ask ourselves honestly, hey, am I comfortable at my job? Yeah, that's great that you're comfortable at your job. And if that's your dream job and that's what you want to do from now until eternity, great. But if it's not, ask yourself if you're comfortable and if you're okay with that comfort. Where I left my last job was, I enjoyed the analytical aspect of what I did. What I didn't enjoy was being paid less than the market rate for it. And I communicated that, hey, look, I'm an analyst. And not only am I an analyst, I'm a cost analyst. So, I've done this cost analysis now on how much I should be making versus how much I make, based on experience, based on what I bring to the table. And there's a discrepancy that should probably be addressed, where a lot of people will say, well, I make good money. I have a high school diploma, and so I should be really grateful for the opportunity. It didn't take away from my gratefulness for the opportunity, but what was important to me was that, hey, I want to be gainfully employed, but I also want to be paid what I'm worth. I don't want to feel like there is a lack of connection between the work I provide, that I know the value is there, and the value that I'm paid. There shouldn't be a disconnection between that. And if there is, which there was, that is going to create a level of resentment or tension that will inevitably have to be addressed either by myself or by the organization. So that's the first thing, is ask ourselves if we're comfortable. Life should really have a good balance of comfort and discomfort. It's kind of like a teeter-totter seesaw. It kind of goes, at one point you're uncomfortable, and then you work to gain that comfort back. And as you get that comfort back, now you find yourself comfortable. So then you have to put yourself in another uncomfortable position and work to teeter-totter it back to the other side. And I feel genuinely that is how life should be. Not that life should be a struggle, but if we're really working to become the best versions of ourselves, we should always be working to build our emotional intelligence, our mental muscle, our physical prowess. We're supposed to be working on those things to be moving forward, not falling backwards. So that's the first tool. The second tool that I came up with is pay attention to the warning signs before a rut sets in. Before a rut can set in, figure out what those warning signs are. Mark, you did a really great job of sharing some of the warning signs of ruts. I liken it to being on the road. You can be on the road and there are tons of signs. There's speed limits, there's one-way signs, there's single lane highways, there's exits signs, there's U-turns, dead ends, all kinds of signs to give you information about what is coming up on the road. Please pay attention to those signs when it comes to being on a rut. Like even in the sense of where Mark, you talked about the dead end job. There's signs, even in the interview process, there can be signs of, hey, this organization that I'm looking to get into may not be the best fit for me. Like the people look worn out, so they're overworked. The people, even in the interview, are complaining about the job that they do. They're overworked. They're underpaid. There's not a lot of respect from management. Like if these are the signs that are coming, don't put yourself in dead end complacent situations. Be willing to look at the sign, acknowledge what the sign is saying, and then decide if that is the direction you want to keep going. And don't ever allow pride or ego, fear or shame to keep you from making a decision to either turn around and go back, make a right, make a left, or if you feel like you're going in the right direction, keep allowing that direction to be pulled. Keep allowing yourself to be pulled in that direction. So that is the second tool that I came up with. And the how, I'm sorry, I forgot for that tool. The how for that tool is intentional reflection. Sometimes when I don't know if you've ever been driving, and they call it highway hypnosis. You've been driving from work to home so many times that sometimes you just get in your car at work and you just arrive at home and you have no recollection of how you got from point A to point B. You just know that you're home. That's called highway hypnosis. And so in order to make sure you're aware of the warning signs or even paying attention to the warning signs, what it takes is intentional reflection, really taking those moments out in quietness and stillness and really asking yourself like, okay, what did I see at my job today? Okay, what did I see in this relationship today? What did I see in myself today? Asking yourself those questions so that you can replay the road signs that you're seeing, letting you know if you're stuck in a rut. Okay, well, if in my relationship today, I see myself walk past my wife and I'm supposed to love this woman, I didn't acknowledge her, didn't say hi, didn't ask how her day was, and I just walked past her and went to the room and vegged out. If that's what I seen, and how now the question is how often am I doing that? Because if I'm doing that every single day, that's a rut. And I can start to see the road signs on where that road sign is going to lead. I think a lot of us can agree that eventually, if you don't talk to me and I don't talk to you and we live together and we're supposedly married, no, we're not married, we're roommates, and I'm going to get a new roommate. That's what I would think. So that is the second tool, and that is the how of the second tool is intentional reflection. And then the third and the final tool from how to get out of a rut or getting out of a rut is don't accept any excuses for why you're in the rut. And I think that goes back to that self-sabotage or the self-contamination that takes place in a rut. We get in a rut and we say, oh, it's because I grew up in this type of neighborhood, or I'm at this dead end job that I'm not going to make any more money, even though I'm not happy with the money, but where else am I going to find money like this? Don't make excuses for your rut. It's okay. There are some serious reasons why you can be in a rut, but analyze that, do the analysis, and then figure out how you're going to get out of the rut. Don't just simply make a decision that, well, this is the rut. This is the life that I've been handed. These are the cards that I was dealt. So I'm just going to play these cards that I was dealt because I'm stuck here. No. A rut will make you'll be stuck in a rut if you take a victim mentality. Take the initiative and say, hey, look, I'm not going to be the victim to this situation. I'm going to be very intentional about getting out of it. And there's not an excuse in the world that I can accept to not get out of this rut. I see that when it comes to like me and manhood, me and fatherhood. Like there's been some challenging things I've had to experience as a father. Some days you want to quit as a father. However, even in those days that I want to quit, I always challenge myself and say, but you chose to be a father and you know how important fatherhood is to you. So therefore, even if it's a rough day, even if it's a day where you're getting knocked down every time you stand up in the ring, you got to get back up and get back in that fight. So those are the 3 tools that I came up with when it comes to getting out of a rut. The first being, ask ourselves if we are too comfortable, find that balance between comfort and discomfort, play with it often. The second tool being, pay attention to the warning signs before a rut can set in. Make sure you're watching the road signs. And then the third tool being, don't accept excuses for why you are in your rut. So those are the 3 tools that I got for the night. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. It's been a very wonderful, wonderful evening with you, Mark. Thank you for coming in and rocking with the people. Tell your wife I said thank you for bringing you some agua to get you rehydrated. I try to tell people, I'm like, look, you think you got enough moisture in your mouth until you talk for an hour. So I appreciate you coming in tonight. For those who are watching in the live chat, I appreciate you guys being a part and interacting with us tonight, keeping the conversation going as well, and the nuggets that you brought to the table as well. Other than that, the next live show that we will actually have will be tomorrow. And actually, Mark, you hinted to this. I'm not even going to say it was in your third bullet point, so they'll have to go back and watch what that was, but you hinted to this. Tomorrow's live show will be the Wednesday Word. That is at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and the topic actually is the build up. So if you want to know what that's about, listen to Mark's takeaway. The third takeaway is a very good hint to what that is going to be about. But I hope you guys can join me live for that one. But other than that, that's all we got for the night. I want to tell you again, Mark, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your transparency. Thank you for moving from the audience into the hot seat. And hopefully we get to do this again, my man.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me on.
No worries. Other than that, as always, we are happy to engage with you. If you're watching live, obviously you seem we've engaged all night. But if you're watching via the replay, we're happy to engage with you on our content up until the first week that it's been out. After that, we move on to the next content. But we're happy to engage with you from there. For other than that, as always, if you like this video, share it. If you share it, like it. Don't forget to click the subscribe button if you're not a subscribed member to the First Row as of yet. This is our network, not just my network, not just Mark's network. It's all of our network. So please subscribe. And when you click the subscription button, click that bell so you can be notified when we are live on the First Row. Other than that, I thank you guys for joining us for this night's Intersation. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow on the First Row. Until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless.